Greetings, Turok. I am Adon.
Not too long ago, ignoring that upload date, I took a look at an FPS adaptation of a recently revived comic book protagonist. Turok, dinosaur hunter with a rapid-paced running gun with little regard for story as the gameplay took center stage. So what happens if, before it's even released, that same company began work on its sequel? One that would not only be bigger, but attempt to add actual story segments and Metroidvania elements, as well as include advancements in technology and bring in a new protagonist. Most would reasonably assume such an action would be a madman's will, but on December 10th, 1998, Acclaim released Turok 2: Seeds of Evil. 1998 is simply one of those years for gaming. It was a point when all sorts of amazing games were pushing the bounds of the field. The FPS genre received several notable titles. Half-Life pushed how shooters handled story and brought with it fun shooting and impressive moments. You also had Rainbow Six showing how one could toe the line between fun and simulation. Then, just before the year ends, we find ourselves with Turok 2: Seeds of Evil, a title that began development before its predecessor was even tested on the market. Good for Acclaim that the first was well received upon release. I found it to be a fun running gun experience, but did feel the lack of story context for what I was doing.
Now what the hell is going on here, Will?
The sequel remedies that immediately, as upon starting a new game, you are quickly introduced to our Turok, Joshua Fireseed, and the guiding voice Tao Waifu Adon. Seems after constructing the Chronoscepter to blast the campaigner to ash, Tao Set decided to permanently destroy the weapon. He took a page out of Heihachi's book and threw it in a volcano, the destruction causing such a ruckus that it awoke a being known only as the Primogen. Luckily, he's trapped inside his ship, which itself is trapped by 5 energy totems constructed by the Lazarus Concord. What's not so good is that the Primogen has telepathic powers and managed to reach out to the Dinosaurs, beings that wish to see humanity wiped out from the Lost Lands. While Joshua did exist before the first game, the Primogen was created for this title. There was a tie-in comic, but like I said in the previous video, I will only be using pieces of it. In a later video, I will more fully explore the comic's run. Once again, I am working off the Night Dive remaster, which has brought along many improvements that are double-sided coins. The sequel may have us as a new character, but he more or less plays the same as Tao Set. The first remaster did up the speed, so maybe we now move at the original speed of the game. Either way, we won't see the actual character differences until the third entry. What we will see here is an incredibly large list of firearms. The first title sported plenty, with most fitting into archetypes and some becoming redundant. The only out there weapons were things like the Freeze Cannon, Chronoscepter, and maybe the Nuke. Well, I won't spoil them all here, suffice to say developers got much more creative with the arsenal, and it got to a point where all my hotkeys had at least 2 options on them.
When you need it and don't have it, you sing a different tune.
The punch of firearms has seen a noticeable crank up, and ammo switching is now a feature, so you no longer find yourself hesitant to burn through your special ammo. Speaking of ammo, the game seems rather low. I seem to do alright nailing my shots, but multiple times throughout the levels, I found myself clicking through my arsenal for anything with ammunition. Ammo pickups are infinite and a bit randomized, so you can at least grind supplies. However, pickups are rather low and don't spawn very fast, so it can become pace breaking to do so. Alongside that, there are limited resupplies from Adon throughout levels. Luckily, the game includes a few infinite ammo weapons like the Warblade and Razor Wind. Great weapons need great enemies, and the ones facing Turok do not disappoint. The first game had fun foes that, while not the most alive, were varied and served their purpose. This time around, the enemy variety has been increased alongside the player's interactions with them. Damage done is now more location specific. A hit to the head is not only a quicker kill, but it can also lead to it popping like a melon. Some shots can stun, and the death animations have only gotten better. Just the sheer amount of blood splattering on the scene would leave any gorehound happy. A detail that truly took me by surprise was that some enemies have armor or equipment that when shot does nothing at all apart from rewarding you with a metallic ping. While Night Dive did brush up the hit detection, it is really impressive what was being done on the N64 at the time. This extends to the levels. Turok Dinosaur Hunter had hints of civilization, while the sequel goes all out with full cities. Though their layouts aren't on par with something like Bloodborne's layout, it's still very impressive for the time, even if some layouts go beyond gamey and into frustration territory. One last thing I want to point out with the enemy NPCs is how much character they have. The Leapers manage to be memorable with their strange movement towards the player and unique cries. Here, a Dinosaur decides to pop his active camo, and the fucker waves at me. That's just downright cheeky. Enemies overall are just much more dynamic compared to the first. I have to wonder if Dinosaurs were some sort of inspiration for Halo enemies, as when critically damaged they may decide to go out in a blaze of glory in one last attempt to catch the player. Which isn't a horrible tactic, as Turok 2 comes from that time where explosive damage kinda lingered. Just like the prior title, the music on the remaster is split between PC and N64 soundtracks. Once again, I suggest the N64 version. Missions this time around are a bit less straightforward. You'll still be searching levels for keys to unlock more levels, but each mission will have other objectives ranging from saving children to blowing up supply depots. You have to do these in order to get a defensive level, guarding an energy totem from hordes of enemies. Attempting to leap through the end portal without completing all objectives will see the player thrown back to the start. Outside of the first level, you can use portals to teleport to the hub or to other levels. There's typically 3 per level. It's here you can also recover some health and ammo from Adon. Due to how confusing the maps can be, you may find yourself scouring entire levels just searching for the objective. The remaster did add in markers for them, and while they can at times be overbearing, they do help reduce the burnout the game suffers from. The shooting is fun and enjoyable, but with every level being a labyrinth, it can drain on the player, especially with later levels featuring tons of repeating textures, dark environments, and overlapping layers not distinguished well enough on the map. During my streams, there were whole levels I had to map up on screen as I tried to navigate. Incentivizing the player to return to prior levels are the abilities one can unlock. You find a feather, then a corresponding teleporter, and have a brief chat with Tal Seth. These abilities can range from great leaps to swimming in dangerous liquids. They largely aren't all that dynamic, as each can only be used around a specific pad. So it's less a power-up and more a form of key for gates. It still serves as a way to get the player to scour levels for secrets and weapons, adds some mild Metroidvania elements, but never hits me with the same enjoyment of something like Metroid Dread or Arkham Asylum. At least the secrets saw a major overhaul. The first game had obstacles needing to be destroyed or non-damaging lava to swim in. The sequel makes a choice to be even more cryptic, with secrets tied behind shooting birds in one specific area. Who the hell would even guess that? I know I bought Turok 2, but I really want to play Duck Hunt. Again, I think Burnout the game is what got me most. Again, it's a fun game, but with frustrations abounding, especially for someone trying to obtain the secret weapon, the game can become a chore. From here, I'll be covering the game on a level-by-level basis, so if you're interested in not being spoiled, head to the timestamp on screen. If not, let's portal into the port of Adia.
Child rescued.
Thank you, Turok.
We open up with an awesome cutscene, showing the coastal city under siege by dinosaurs. The army's getting their ass kicked. Shame we won't be fighting alongside any soldiers until evolution. The first level is really good at putting its best foot forward. You'll start at the pier with only your bow and talon, neither of which grant you honor kills or have a secret crit attack, but with the explosions, heroic score, and gore, you'll probably not even notice. That said, you do also have a flare gun, but its usage is non-existent. While you might think it would have a use on darker areas, the game simply never got dark enough to warrant it. Also, the original was covered in fog, which it did nothing to clear, so I'm not sure why it was included. Still, with a pistol in hand, you keep moving, clearing out dinosaurs and raptors. Did I mention this game is a little over the top? Again, I love how largely this feels like an actual city ripped right out of some pulp sword and sorcery sci-fi novel. I also like how interactable the environment is. It's nothing crazy, but lockboxes in a barrack or targets with arrows embedded serve as supplies for the player. The objectives for this map are to turn on a few beacons and save children. Creepy as they look, they are relatively harmless. However, they're also easy to miss as buttons to them may be located past the hidden doors. The remaster's notifications help, but why do these barrels need to be marked? They aren't special in any way, not needed for progression or secrets, just random barrels. I suppose I'd rather they overdid it than underdo it, but hey, here's a shotgun.
Shotgun.
The first major surprise comes after activating a portal, which leads you to some not very nice hosts. These are the forces of Oblivion. Not even Adon knows exactly who they are or what they want. But from this point forward, each level will feature one trap portal. It really isn't much of a trap, as throughout levels you'll find feathers, which you'll need to activate special portals to gain the abilities of. That is the only other form of portal that these traps replace, not the warp ones. So it's more 50-50, and the threats inside never pose much challenge, especially if you manage to pack some tech arrows or explosive shells. If anything, they are rather necessary, as you can retrieve parts to construct the nuke. This game's Chronoceptor that I'll touch on later.
Whatever this new threat is, it seems that false portals have been erected to lure you into a trap.
For right now, there isn't much you can achieve on this level, so after being shocked by the sheer amount of notifications, you have the choice of level 2 and 3. Small detail I'd like to point out is how each portal is different based on the level. Just some cool attention to detail when they could have just stuck with standard portals. If you thought Turok was free of the zombie virus, well, this next level has a form of it. The River of Souls is a deadly river that, through the energy totem, was being purified. However, with the Dinosaur army attacking, things have turned from bad to worse. The undead are rising up, and soul portals are letting hordes of them through. Your targets here fall more under the Seek and Destroy, and they will become more and more prevalent. Handle 3 sisters and destroy the soul portals.
Locate the energy totem and defend it at all costs.
This level largely feels the same to the first, with similar architecture and only slightly more intricate map layout. However, unlike the first, which saw some similar jungle levels, this one differentiates itself with a vehicle segment, or dinosaur segment. Whatever you call it, this game delivers on a semi-powered fantasy as Turok mounts up and blasts his way through the dinosaur defenses. I absolutely love the game's character on display here, as the weaker melee dinosaurs only run in circles as they cannot harm the player. There's also another good secret with you needing to blow up the towers. I think my only complaint is how severe the drop-off is on the guns. Sure, the rockets may just be lobbing grenades, but the machine gun has way too much drop-off. I have to wonder if the original's fog was meant to shroud this. Speaking of weapons, this level sees the player upgrading their arsenal. The Talon is quickly replaced with the Warblade, essentially the same weapon but with better range and more power, helpful on the compies that you'll be up against in the early stages. The other is the Mag 60, which replaces the burst rifle of the Dinosaur Hunter and serves as a sort of superior pistol. I don't think it does more damage, but it is a 3-round burst that does eat through ammo a fair bit faster. Finally, there's a Trank Rifle, which I don't understand. On paper, it's meant to incapacitate enemies for a few moments. I suppose that could give you time to line up shots, but I just found it unreliable and difficult to take effect, and ultimately never touched it. Besides, the sisters and portals aren't that difficult to finish off, you simply need good aim. Also, I'd suggest the Mag 60 for the portals, as with the distance, it seemed like the shotgun did very little damage. Also, even when the portals are close, enemies will continue to spawn. I found that a bit annoying. Even taking them out, they respawn way too fast, so it's best to simply focus down the portal. It's this level where you will acquire the Leap of Faith talisman, so after finishing up you can head on back to port and snag the first Primogen key. You'll need all of them to finish the game, much like how you needed Chapter 8 keys come the end of Turok Dinosaur Hunter. There's one in each level here, meaning you'll have to backtrack to win. With the third level, it's time to pull tight your Rambo bandana, as it combines the rescue mission of 1 with the search and destroy of 2. The Death Marshes is home to the Purlins. You might remember them as the big dummies from before. Well, they've seen a tech boost and now utilize machine guns, swords, and more. Though some do stick to tradition. Turns out all that conquesting done by the Dinosaurs has led to POWs in need of saving. There's also munition storages that need to be destroyed. I rather like this mission despite not being a fan of it originally. It's a swamp and a pulpy sci-fi setting, so it comes with all the usual trappings. Mud that slows you down, weird worm creatures in said mud, and the Purlins are fans of ambushing the player. You also have giant wasp hives to deal with. Turok and Dangerous Hunt have a lot in common, more than I expected. This level kicks off something I'm a little mixed on. So you have to destroy the munitions, but shooting them isn't enough. Instead, you need to find satchel charges hidden throughout the level. This adds an objective on top of your objective. The munition stores are easy enough to find, but it's annoying when you have to progress past them to find a satchel charge to them and then backtrack to destroy them. Also, be sure to run, as this Turok doesn't count very high when setting the timer. Guess running from explosions is just a contractual obligation. Another contractual obligation comes in the form of the plasma rifle. It's dropped the rate of fire for far more ammo consumption and power. It comes off more like a carbine and is capable of delivering solid damage, though headshots are still crucial. Much like the tech bow, it has a scope function, but unlike the tech bow, it doesn't have drop off. Keeping with the future tech vibe, you also get your hands on the Shredder. They upgraded shotgun that fires a singular projectile that upon striking will ricochet into several smaller shots. I wasn't sure if it did less or more damage, but it's a fun alternative, especially for more CQB levels. In this mission, you will manage to find the blue feather, which will allow you to navigate treacherous waters. Not all of them, but any that have the insignia next to them. This is mostly handy for the River of Souls level, as you can secure additional weapons. Sadly, this does bring us to the halfway point of Turok 2, which is where it decides to take a fucking nosedive. Level 4 is the Lair of the Blind Ones, and has Turok going underground to seal Mole Man-like creatures. They aren't really in on the Primogen's plans, they're just a neutral enemy you need to beat back. This level fucking sucks. Now I'll admit I tried marathoning to get footage, which is a huge mistake. This game's map design is aggressively aimed to wear down the player. That will effectively happen come this one. Now I did also suffer with it during the stream, so even when not plowing through I ended up ground to dust. Well, you have only one objective, that being to find satchel charges to seal the vents. It is stretched out over an overly long, overly repeating series of underground levels. Plenty of hallways that overlap and even long underwater segments, one of which has a door you'd think would lead to a secret, but is instead required for progression. Switches are hidden in small pockets that are completely black, though objective markers do render this null and void. You also have levers to shoot that honestly I don't know how anyone would notice without help or pure luck. At the very least, you can locate some handy underwater weapons. The harpoon gun is fine and just a means of better attack, while the torpedo launcher makes it so Turok can more easily traverse water. Its attack is fine, but ammo is so limited, meaning it serves better as a mode of transportation. Made me really want to play Subnautica. Lair of the Blind Ones is usually the level all Turok 2 players mention as being the worst. Personally, I think a solid contender for that placement is Lair of the Mantids. Remember the aliens from the last game? Well, they're back, and there's a lot more of them. Again, it may be the Burnout talking, but most, if not all, my criticism from the last level carries over. So many repeating zones, overlapping hallways, labyrinth design, but now you have tougher enemies and faster enemies. It's just so tiring to be doing these back to back. I think what helped me tolerate it in the first level, apart from it being more sunny, was the fact that there were recognizable landmarks to locate. A bazaar-like street and town square of sorts, a peaceful pool complete with waterfall. Oh look, open areas with statues of winged beast. It all managed to come off recognizable with only a few repeats that could somewhat confuse, but these two levels I'm running around with my map on screen desperately trying to remember where to go, and don't get me started on messing around with any of the nuke or feather portals. Lair has a lever on one side of the map, open a water-filled journey on the other side of the map. The Mantive Hive doesn't get that bad, but it does get confusing on where the hell the feather portal is due to repeating rooms and you having to double back when retrieving the feather. It's in this level you get the charged dart rifle, which is superior to the tranq rifle. It has a more reliable means of stunning an enemy. Simply charge up enough and the enemy will be immobilized, long enough for you to line up an easy headshot or tear away with the warblade. Also, it's here I started noticing that if melee enemies got close enough, you really couldn't hit them with your weapons. I mainly noticed this with the plasma rifle. Something to note when playing the game. At the very least, the final level pulls it back from the brink. Is it perfect? No. Does it drive me up a wall? Not entirely. I think what I liked about this one is that the core segment of the level has you taking paths you unlock that will eventually loop back to the central room. Press the button you've reached, drop back down, and take the newly opened path. It's looping, yes, but it isn't a labyrinth designed to take years off my life. The story for this one is that the Primogen has a backup plan in the event of his death. Basically, if he dies, then the ship will pump out his cyborg horrors into the Lost Land, slaughtering anything they come across. Good thing we still need to get her all the Primogen keys to face him. Adding to this level is one last memorable and creepy encounter with the mysterious trap portal faction we've been fighting.
You're after excitement, Nicholas. The dam is built around you. For all your efforts, the Totems will fall. Your victory. Your failures. Order or chaos. They all fuel the unquenchable fire of oblivion. Except the inevitable.
Thank the Council that you still live, Turok. This new evil continues to confuse me. Though I do not understand its power, I feel that its source is eternal. Do not let this threat deter you. The Primogen must be stopped, or all is lost.
Well, I'm sure this will amount to little. Now about those Primogen keys. By now you should have the means to secure all talismans. You can endure toxic water, jump buildings in a single bound, plow a flame Atronach, as well as follow the whispers of your ancestors, or something, and see invisible paths. Those last two only have a handful of uses as far as I could tell. Before we fight the final battle, I need to point out I have skipped the bosses of this game. There's 4 counting the big bad. The first is after the Lair of the Blind Ones, and sees you fighting strange tentacles, larvae, and blasting a giant eye. Wait, the boss for the Blind Ones is a giant eye? It's a fun enough boss that caps off one of the more annoying levels, which repeats for the Mantid Hive. There you take on the Mantid Queen and her swarm enemy, these gigantic mites. They were smaller ones in the level, but here you get the big ones. Just kinda meh, it's far from the worst boss fight I've played, but everything past the giant eye has location-based weak points, and her starting one is the tail, while she's very aggressive and charging you constantly. It can make nailing the weak points difficult, though it does end with you executing her in a way that reminds me of the execution from Doom 2016. Then there's the Mother for the Light Ship, a grotesque freak that is sort of a mix. She's big on having weak points to blast off, but also has phases to her fight. One involves bringing down rubble, which you can seek cover from under some open vents. She'll swing around, and you can blast her limbs. The strangest thing is that we don't actually kill this boss. It sort of just angrily moves into the darkness. Later when I cover the comic, we'll see if her fate is different. Now at the end of our tale, here comes the final boss, the Primogen. The Primogen is a big dude, and unlike the previous 3, he doesn't opt to attack alongside jobbers. That isn't to say he won't use them. He likes staying behind some protective glass while dropping bombs on the player. If that doesn't work, he'll send in droids to finish you off. Once they're dispatched, this will finally bring him out and allow you to deal damage. The nuke can largely deplete a health bar normal, but you need to time it so he doesn't fly above it or something. On paper this doesn't sound too bad, but it is a slog, as you must deplete 3 full health bars, and he will occasionally keep going while having no health until he decides to head back, starting up the next round of phases. It's a grinding boss fight to one hell of a grinding game, but when you do finally defeat him, the totems power up and finish off the foe.
Thank you for your valor, Turok. For now, the Primogen is no more. His body has been crushed, but the power of his mind is great. The physical destruction of the Primogen has stabilized the structure of the Netherscape. I fear, however, that the Primogen is not truly gone. For now, we can only wait. I have been unable to identify the force which conspired against you during your battle with the Primogen. Its form eluded me. While I searched, a feeling of dread washed over me, a feeling unlike any that I have ever experienced. There is a natural balance in the cosmos between that which we define as good and that which we know as evil, light and dark, order and chaos. Although I have been unable to gain any specific knowledge of this being, its energy signature feels as if it exists beyond either fundamental force. And one other thing, Joshua. Each time I scanned this entity's signature, I also detected the energies of the Turok lineage as well. Whatever it is, your ancestors have dealt with it before.
If you had failed to protect the totems, this would be a much bleaker ending with Joshua trapped and his world essentially gone. In the happier and canon ending, Joshua wins. The totems finish off the Primogen, and Adon speaks of a threat approaching. I guess that's why it's called Seeds of Evil. They were sowing to reap in the third title. Also, while I said I'd largely ignore the tie-in comic, I do think it's worth noting what started this. The Primogen wanted to see the birth of creation, so used his light ship to essentially time travel to the start, but essentially he became a magnet for the fabrics of time and worlds, so he, in a way, became the Big Bang, to only be awoken when Talset destroyed the Chronoscepter. In the comics, he actually has a more diplomatic end with Joshua, and it's borderline sympathetic. In-game, however, he's just a dick, but in the comics he has a much different motivation come the end. I do wonder how and why that decision was made, but I will dive into that another day. Guess you can say I'm laying my own seeds. Turok 2, Seeds of Evil is an interesting game. The first was a pure run and gun with occasional platforming segments. The sequel ups the shooting in just about every way, has much less platforming, but instead tries to go for a sort of Metroidvania approach. I think a fair few people will walk into this title expecting more of the sci-fi shooter the rest of the franchise was, especially how everything I typically hear about this game is guns, and shooting. However, I really didn't enjoy the backtracking here. It simply didn't hit home the same as Metroid Dread or Bloodstained. In those, I'd trek across an entire interconnected map and maybe use a teleporter to get closer and save time. In Turok, it's I warp to the hub or to a specific portal in the map, march to a pad on the ground, use my ability, then dip out. I typically never felt the need to explore and utilize my abilities ever. Just if I saw some preset pad, I would know I could utilize one power. Simply put, it felt bland to do, and the labyrinth-style levels don't help to alleviate the feeling. At least the shooting does feel good, and the advancements made, especially from the previous title, are amazing. I loved how this one not only included story in the game, but gave us more insight into the world of Turok. It's a rather rich franchise that we've really only seen glimpses of, though while Joshua does have a different character from Talset in the books, here he's just a new face. In fact, the enemies have more personality than him, so don't come in expecting Turok Guns of Oblivion. Honestly, I don't think I mentioned the cerebral bore once in this entire review. Feels weird, so here's footage of the Phantasm gun. It's fine, I didn't use it often, but it's fun enough. That's what I'd call Turok 2. Fun enough. I think the additions the remaster adds help the game a ton, though there's only so much you can do for some levels. If given the choice, I prefer Dinosaur Hunter, but the enhancements in nearly all departments make the sequel worth playing if you are invested in the series. I suppose the game I'm most excited in trying is the third. I have never played it, but it could end up being my favorite if it manages to keep the action and fun of the first game while also fleshing out the game's story and world. And in here, I just want to say, the multiplayer got a burst rifle. Why not a burst pistol? Just something I kept wondering about. Plus, I disliked how the nuke parts were all the same. I'd like seeing each piece of the Chronoscepter be put together. Honestly, by the time I'm done with this series, Origins will probably be out. I hope that won't be Oblivion for the franchise.
Locate the energy totem and defend it at all costs.